It's our turn, episode number 71, the boss battle against imposter syndrome in gaming. In this episode, Sarah Reed, Kathleen Mercury, and I discuss overcoming imposter syndrome in the gaming hobby.
This is the Dice Tower Network, adding games to your wish list since 2005.
Hosting for this episode is generously provided by our fantastic supporters on Patreon.com. If you'd like to help us out by pledging $1 per month or more, please visit patreon.com/OurTurnPodcast. Every dollar helps us to keep this show going strong. Hi, and welcome back to Our Turn. I am Cathy Ford.
And I'm Sarah Reed.
And I'm Kathleen Mercury.
Hi, ladies.
Hello.
Hi.
It's good to talk to you again. Today, we are all here together to talk about the boss battle against imposter syndrome in gaming. But before we get to that, we always start the show by talking about what we've been playing lately. So, Sarah, why don't you go ahead and start us off? What have you been getting to the table?
Well, before I get to the game that I'm going to talk about, I'm going to talk about briefly the game that I tried to get to the table that just didn't quite work out. So for our Patreons, we always do the poll about what games we should play next. And for me, I was supposed to play Broom Service and Tiny Epic Quest. We didn't quite get through Broom Service. Needless to say, I am even... as far as I've been in this hobby for at least over 5 years, I still end up making mistakes and purchasing the wrong game. So,
oh, you didn't like it?
We couldn't get through one turn. So, for those who don't know, Will has some serious vision disabilities. And I didn't pay enough attention to the fact that Broom Service added a detailed map. I thought it was a map. I just didn't quite realize it'd be that detailed. And it requires a lot of hidden information. So while we set it all up, we read all the rules, Will's like, okay, let's just tell me where we are currently on the map. Just tell me what's immediately around and we'll just go from there. The fact that he then selected the wrong cards because of his, vision issues, that just did not bode well. So we didn't even get one turn in. So I can't even say if it's a good or a bad game. It was the wrong choice for us.
Okay. Well, that's too bad. I've heard lots of good things about it. Didn't it win like the Spiel des Jahres or something like that?
Yeah, I've played it. So,
have you, Kathleen?
Yeah. There's a game that was sort of the precursor to it called Witch's Brew.
Yes.
You would choose cards, play them in sequence, and then, gain resources and trying to, do potions. So it was more or less, that's more just a card game. So, but with Broom Service, you're trying to basically build potions, but also conquer lands as you cross the board. And then the further you go, then you can score more points from it. And it's really kind of interesting because the first time I played it, I thought, I'm definitely going to buy this. And the second time I played it, I think because I had bad luck in predicting what other people were going to play and that, can have some negative consequences, then I was like, I'm not going to buy this. I've kind of oscillated, with that game because you can have a really great game or it can be really frustrating because so much of what you can do to really optimize your turns, if somebody's getting really lucky and, they're able to, take a lot of actions or get really powerful actions, well, they're going to have a great game. And so it's fun and it's, I think it's definitely worth playing, but I would definitely recommend that if people are interested in it, that they buy it. That they play it before they buy it.
Yeah. And that was my other point. What Kathleen said is there's some negative loops in the game because of the way you choose your actions, you have to choose, are you going to play it strong or weak? And the downside is you play it strong, but then somebody else does, you get absolutely nothing. And those kind of negative loops, if that happens often enough, you're going to fall behind and there's really not going to be a lot of ways to catch back up. So I don't think even if we had been able to get through the vision issues with Will, I'm not sure I would have enjoyed the gameplay per se because it's not, I don't really like that kind of negative gameplay. I prefer that at least there be something that you can do, even if you do the risk of, there should be some risk, but then you still get to do something. And so that is like Kathleen, you can have a good game and you can have a really bad game. So it's going to be somewhere in the middle. But then again, that's also why it's, I think, supposed to be lighter weight. So don't take it too seriously either.
Yeah, but it is a little bit of a longer game. It's probably 45 minutes to an hour, I think. So if you're not enjoying it, it can kind of tip over that 45-minute happiness level, if that's a thing for some people in terms of how long they can abide by a game, and they start, pulling out their phones a lot, that sort of thing.
Yeah.
It's not a good sign.
Okay.
I can
so this one's going on your trade pile, Sarah?
Yes. Broom Service is going to get traded away. Like I said, I don't think it's a bad game. I think there are going to be people who are going to like it, and then there are people who really will not like it. So, yeah, it's one to play before you buy.
Let's compare our trade lists at some point, not like right now, but because that's one I'm interested in.
Okay.
And if we can trade something, I'd like to give it a try.
Sounds like a plan. So,
all right. So now the game you were going to talk about.
The game I'm going to talk about, which also was voted on for us to play, is Tiny Epic Quests, which I am very glad that this one worked out. So for Will and I, the Tiny Epic line has been hit or miss with us, with so far more misses than hits.
Oh.
But Tiny Epic Quest works. So it's got, that classic story of fairy tale world, run over by evil, and you've got to be a hero, So you definitely think Legend of Zelda in cardboard form. Each player controls a band of 3 heroes and travels the world fighting goblins, learning spells, completing quests, and you're trying to acquire some powerful magical items to help you along the way. So the world is made up of 17 map cards. Each has 2 locations, a left side and a right side. So there's a total of 34 locations. So this is where we were kind of concerned whether or not this was going to work for Will. He really put off playing the Tiny Epic Quest game for a long time. I'd ask him, he'd be like, nope, not ready for that. So until this poll came out, this is what finally got it to the table. So thank you guys for voting on it. Thank you guys and ladies. So it can be overwhelming at first that there's 34 different locations, but it can be parsed down because there's only certain things that you could do early on in the game. For example, 10 of those 34 locations are where you learn spells, but you have to learn spells in order from 1 to 10. You can kind of push your luck to try to skip a few levels, but there's no way to learn level 10 in the first round of the game. So you really don't need to know where all of the different, I forgot what they were called, shrines or whatever, to learn those spells. And while this is a sandbox style game, you have guidance on where to go. Besides those spells, there's quests. So there's going to be cards in a row, and they're going to have certain requirements that you have to fulfill. You either have to have your heroes in certain spots on the board, or you have to complete certain temples, and then you can gain nice rewards, like I said, those special items, or there's healing that you can, get. You also have 3 legendary items on your player board that you unlock. Or you have to complete certain temples to unlock, and you have to do them in a certain order. Every player card is a different order of temples, for their items. Even if the items do the same thing, I might have to do the water temple and then the fire temple, but you have to do the desert temple and then, I don't know, there's another temple. So you do have guidance early on. So while the world looks really large, once you figure out what can I do right now, it narrows it down really well. So once we got through that, Will was like, oh, okay, I can handle this. Because for Will, the whole map, it's all in his head because he can't see any of it. So he has to be able to see it in his head to know where to go. And the great thing is how movement also helps him parse it down. It's really interesting. It's got a kind of role selection mechanic. There's 5 cards that show different patterns of movement across this map. And then each player will choose one on their turn, but everyone gets to move one of their heroes according to that pattern. And so I might do the one that does a vertical line. So you can pick one of your heroes to go up and down anywhere in a column of these cards. And I do it, and then the next person does it, and the next person does it. You can always skip, in which case I think you get to heal, if I remember correctly. And so all this movement happens during the day phase. And once that's done, the night phase begins. And this is where the push your luck comes in, which is really, really the meat of the game. During the night is when you're trying to actually get to the end of the temple tracks and defeat the goblins and move the magic up high enough so you can actually learn the spell. So on your turn, you roll the dice, and you're going to resolve them by doing the goblin attacks first. I mean, they'll deal damage to you. Then you go through raising the magic level, which also increases the threat level of all the bad stuff that can happen at the night phase. And then you finally get to see results of what you're trying to accomplish. So the tricky part is most of the die results are shared by all the players, even if it's your turn. And this shares both good and bad. But at the beginning of your turn, you can rest for the night, whether or not you've completed your goals, and everyone still awake has to face the darkness with one less person to soak up the good and the bad effects. So it can get really dicey as you start to lose hit points, but the dice aren't rolling the way you want them to. But if you play it too safe, you're not going to win the game, but then that's how most push your luck games work. And like I said, that's what Tiny Epic Quest is at its core. You do get to explore a world in a very heroic fashion, but it's about pushing your luck, which can go badly for you. So on this one aspect, I do wish the game were a bit shorter, because in the 2 games we played, it was pretty evident almost a whole round before the end of the game who was going to win, and there's no catch-up mechanics. So you have to find a balance of pushing your luck throughout the whole game, because doing it on the last round won't win it for you. And so the map, right. So while the map cards are randomized, how you lay them out is always the same. So the castles go in these 4 corners, and then you fill in a plus sign in between them, and then you do 2 cards up, 2 cards right, 2 cards down, 2 cards to left. And it's always this pattern, even if the cards then are randomized within that. So again, it wasn't too difficult to tell him where things were. The one other part that's not so great is the graphic design is too well blended in with the art. The worst offender are where you're supposed to learn the spells. They gave each spell an animal icon, which is great flavor, but they should have also identified the map locations with the level of the spell, since you have to learn them in order. And there's no intuitive way to associate that, well, the lion spell is actually level 5. So I got a bit of a crick in my neck looking back and forth between the map cards and the magic to try to figure out, okay, I need to learn the 6th level spell. Which icon is the 6th level spell? So I did buy some number stickers from the dollar store. Next time we play, I'm going to place them on the map cards in as inconspicuous an area as possible. I may cover up some of the art, but honestly, it needs to be readable, and it's gameplay. You need that to be easy. So in the end, we do like this, and we are going to keep it. It scratches that adventure itch. It's fun. It is full of tension. It doesn't take too long to play, even with my gripe if I wish it was a bit shorter. So I give this a solid 4 out of 5.
Nice. I have yet to play any of the Tiny Epic games. We own one. I think we got it at a flea market, but I couldn't. I think it's Kingdoms.
Which one? The first edition or second edition?
I don't know.
You probably have first edition, which unfortunately is the worst edition.
Oh, bummer.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, we'll still give it a shot and see how it goes.
Hey, it might work. Not the best 2-player. I highly recommend playing more people for Kingdoms. That's why we didn't keep it.
Okay. I will check that out. Kathleen, what have you been playing lately?
When I went to BGG Con, Spring BGG, or BGG Spring, whatever it's called, and also Gen Con, I met one of the guys who is on the Kinderspiel jury, and he's really funny. His name's Christopher, and we just had such a fun time hanging out. And so he, when I ran into him at Gen Con, I met him for the first time BGG Spring. When I ran into him at Gen Con, he's like, "Oh, Kathleen, I have something to show you." And I was like, "Okay." And so it's this game that from Amigo Spiele, it's called Deja Vu. And it's a really fun memory game. Now, Spot It drives me crazy. I don't enjoy Spot It. I mean, the memory plus speed, like, I'm okay with, but the game itself is, kind of a little repetitive. And I mean, it's a fine, short, fast filler, but I don't really, it's okay, for what it is. But what I like about Deja Vu is it has all of these symbols, and they're all on pretty thick punch board, and you put them all on the table. They range, in size, a couple inches or something like that. And then there's a deck of cards, and on the deck of cards, each card has 1, 2, or 3 objects. And so what you do is you flip over, and so all the objects are on the cards twice. In some way, some form, each object is represented on the cards exactly twice. So what you do is you flip over a card, and you're looking at the card trying to memorize that object. And then you flip over another card. Well, when you think you've seen a card for the second time, you grab the object that the symbol is, so like a little banana token or, pair of roller skates or whatever it is. And so then, and you pull out 3 cards too as well. And so at the end, those are the only ones that, didn't come up a second time. So if you pull something that was on one of those cards, that's bad. So if you have an object in front of you and it shows up on a card that you misjudge, you grabbed the wrong object or you thought you had already seen it, so you don't get any points for the round. You're just out. But if you make it through, any objects that you have in front of you are a point. So, as the game's going on and cards are being flipped up and some of the objects look really similar intentionally, like an orange and white striped t-shirt and also an orange and white striped safety vest, so you're trying to remember, wait, did I see this? Did I not see this? And it's really funny too, like, especially as like the deck's getting smaller, because then you kind of want to push your luck a little bit, like take an object just in the hopes that you saw it twice, just because you're trying to bump up your score. And then of course, on the last card and it flips up and that's the one you had, then you're just like, oh no, it's terrible. So the fun thing, about Deja Vu that I like about it is you play it in 3 rounds. So the first time, you see everything, you grab everything, you take everything, you get your points, maybe not. And then you do it again. So all the objects go back in the middle and all the cards go back there. So as you flip over a card and you see that object on the card, you're like, wait a minute, did I only see it once this round? Am I thinking about when I saw it on another round? And so it's something that I think with alcohol could be quite hilarious. Because my gosh, when I'm drinking, my logical processing's out the window, so I can only imagine. But it's really, really funny, because especially as the game is going on and you're like, oh, did you see it? And then when it comes up, but the thing is, it's fast enough that if you're out, you're out. And even then too, like in this game, if you tank rounds 1 and round 2, it's highly unlikely that you'll win the game, but it's still really, really funny because that kind of struggle on, do I take this? Do I not take this? Like sometimes I've even like gone to take something, but I'm really not because I want somebody else to take it because I'm trying to trick them, and stuff. So that one's really fun. And the nice thing, that my friend Niels Hertzman, Cyrus Brettspieler, the thing that he told me is that Amigo is, I guess, opening up an American office. And so they're licensing their games more for over here now too, which is great because I ordered it from Germany after Christopher introduced me to it. And because it's really, really fun. Like we've played this with kids as young as 4 or 5, adults, we have played this and it's become a really fun filler game because it's a little bit of like a baby brain burner, The rules are really simple, grab an object if you think you've seen it twice, and that's about it. It couldn't be simpler, but it's really clever in how it's done. It's really fun to play.
That's exciting to hear about Amigo opening up a U.S. office because I think one of their most popular games is popular over here, and that's Bonanza.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And I know I enjoy Werfel Bonanza, but I had to send to Germany for that one too.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Because it's not published over here at all like Bonanza is.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So, so look for that one, Deja Vu. It's got a big eye on the cover. And the components are great. It's got really sturdy, thick Tarot-sized cards, really thick punchboard pieces, which they need to with the flipping of the cards and, the grabbing of the pieces. And they're nice and sturdy and durable. So you can get it in Germany for about 12 euros. In America, I think I got it for like 30, 35. But it was worth it.
Okay.
Yeah.
Great. So that's Deja Vu.
Deja Vu.
All right, great. My game that I'm going to talk about today is Tokaido. But we played today, I think for the first time, maybe the second time, the Crossroads expansion, which is the first expansion for Tokaido. There are apparently 2 more, only one of which I was able to find on Amazon, and I think it's called Matsui, which means festival, if I'm pronouncing it right.
Mm-hmm.
And then there's another one, and I can't remember the name of it right now, but I wasn't finding that one on Amazon at all. But Tokaido, for those who haven't played it, is a very zen game. Yeah. Mm-hmm. There's very little, well, I won't say that. You're occasionally looking at your opponents going, you rat, I can't believe you did that. But for the most part, it's a very zen game. You have this long board that's only about a foot, maybe 18 inches wide, but it's about 30 feet long. And the whole idea is that you're going on vacation and you're walking from Tokyo, which used to be called Edo, to Kyoto. And you're walking this 500-kilometer road, and you're seeing the sights. Yeah. And you're seeing the sights, you're buying souvenirs, you're stopping at temples, you replenish your money at farms. Why? I don't know. Maybe stop and do some work for them or something. You're going to hot springs, you're stopping to paint beautiful panoramas of the view, that kind of thing. And everybody kind of moves along. This was the first game that used the mechanic that whoever's in the back is the next player to go. Whoever's far enough back in the line, they get to skip over, or they can skip over everybody, but they keep going until they're no longer last in line. I've only played, I think, one other game with that mechanic in it, and that is Rocky Road a la mode. The last person in line picks up their little meeple, and you put it down. You're restricted and going only as far as the next inn, the next hotel. Everybody has to stop at the hotel, and you can't go again until everybody has gotten to the inn and eaten. So you're stopping at these places along the way. Now, if yours is the back piece, you can go as many times as you want until you're no longer the back piece. Then, once you're in front, then it's somebody else's turn. Now, this game plays a little differently 2-player. If I remember right, it plays up to 5 players, which is, I've played it 5-player and it's a lot of fun. But Mark and I sat down and played it 2-player, and one of the special rules for a 2-player game is that you have to add a neutral player. And the person who is in front of the line is the one that controls that. So it alternates. When the neutral player is at the back and would be the next player to go, whoever's at the front of the line gets to move them. And they can go anywhere between the two ends. They don't have to take the very next space that's open. You can put them anywhere. And so you're using that neutral player to block where you think your opponent might go. But because it alternates back and forth, you each get a chance to control the neutral player. You're supposed to score this as you go along, as you collect souvenirs and stop at the hot springs and visit the temple and all of that. And then there's end game scoring. Mark and I found that we were forgetting to add things as we went. So we're like, you know what? We'll just do comprehensive scoring at the end of the game, which it worked fine. But it is a fun game. It plays in about 45 minutes to an hour. It's got beautiful artwork. The components are good. The cards are good quality. They're the smaller, I think they're called Euro size cards, or the little cards. The artwork on it is absolutely lovely. There are 3 places you can stop where you're painting different panoramas. One is 3 panels wide, one is 4 panels wide, one is 5 panels wide. And so if you know your opponent's working on a panorama, you want to block them to keep them from getting all the pieces. And then there are also people that you can encounter along the way that will give you added benefits. And the person who had the most encounters along the way gets the Chatterbox Achievement Award at the end, because you stop to talk to the more people along your vacation route. There are achievement cards that you get at the end. Whoever visited the hot springs the most, whoever spent the most money on their food gets an achievement. Whoever talked to had the most encounters along the way gets an achievement. Whoever completed each panorama, the first person to complete each panorama gets an achievement card. And then it's just simple scoring at the end. I actually managed to beat Mark this time, but it was a close game.
Wow.
I think it was like 86 to 82. So it was pretty close. I love this game. I would absolutely give the game Tokaido a 5. The Crossroads expansion, I would give that a 4. It's a decent expansion. It adds some more choices to the game, but it's one of those that I could play with it. I could play without it. I wouldn't necessarily, it's not like some other games where once you have the expansion, you just mix it all in and you have to play with the expansion. This is one where you can absolutely sit down and play it with or without. And either way, it's going to be a great game. So that is Tokaido with the Crossroads expansion. It was designed by Antoine Bauza and published in 2013 from Funforge.
I would probably get the Chatterbox Award.
Some of those encounters are neat because they give you special abilities. Like one that I got allowed you to take a coin from the bank and put it in the temple on your spot in the temple, and you actually get the point for it. And whoever donates the most to the temple at the end gets an additional 10 points. So she was helpful for me. And then another one, I actually got it twice, was for painting panoramas. He gives you the next scene of a panorama. When I got him the first time, it wasn't very helpful because I hadn't started that panorama yet. He has a specific one. But then on the next time I got him, he helped me expand a panorama that I was already fairly far along on. So then that was helpful. And, and all of the characters, all of the player characters have asymmetric powers. So, for example, Mark's character today enhanced his ability to finish the panoramas. And then my character, one of the things you're supposed to do along the way is buy souvenirs. And you're supposed to set up these sets of souvenirs. And the souvenirs can either cost you 1, 2, or 3 coins. Well, my character's ability was he can buy 1 souvenir at each souvenir shop for 1 coin, no matter what the cost is on the card. And you can buy up to 3 souvenirs at a time, depending on how much money you have. So, yeah, and we have, because we got the expansion, we've got a ton of characters, so we haven't even explored all of them yet. So that's Tokaido. And I heartily recommend it with a 5 on the OTP scale.
Nice.
Yeah, I've played the app a couple of times, and because I've never played the cardboard, I always have a little more difficulty learning it through the app. But I definitely enjoyed what I played, so I'm going to have to, I haven't loaded it up in a while, see if they've added any of the expansions, because it did feel like it could use a little bit more for the app version.
Mm-hmm. So. I haven't played the app. Is it got the Zen music like Lanterns does?
I think so. I turn off all the sounds, so but I will actually go back and play Lanterns with my headphones on with the music when I really need a break from work. Oh yeah, that's my lunchtime go-to. I need to get away from everything is Lanterns. Yes.
Mm-hmm. Oh, that's a good idea. I'm taking, next week, I'm taking a group of 30 kids and parents from my school to Italy and Greece for a week. And it's going to be amazing. I'm going to walk around the crater of Mount Vesuvius. Like, I can't even tell you how excited I am about this, but I think having a good selection, I need to bump up my selection of games on my phone and my iPad in preparation for this trip when we do have some moments of downtime that I can disappear into a game. That sounds like Lanterns and Tokaido sound like a perfect contrast for hiking around ancient Rome and Italy and Greece.
Definitely.
It's perfect.
Yeah, and I didn't realize Tokaido had an app, so I'm going to have to look into that. I am also very excited that Terraforming Mars is coming out with an app.
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
So I am looking forward to getting that one as well.
That'll be good.
All right. So, Sarah, what else have you played?
I have played Finished, which is designed by Friedman Freeze, and for those who don't know, he's quite an interesting designer. You either love him or you hate him. There's not a lot of people in between on that scale. But he also either highly succeeds or highly fails with his games because he's always trying something different, really, really different.
Yeah, he designed Power Grid, and he also, which we absolutely love.
Solid.
And he designed 504, which we absolutely hated.
Yeah, that was an interesting experiment.
That was a mess.
Yeah. He did that as an experiment. It works, but it's not really fun. So
no, it really doesn't.
Yeah. So he's been. We just got Fabled Fruit, which has worked really, really well, and we were actually looking into the Fast Forward line, but we couldn't get a hold of any of them. But I saw Finished. And we watched a review of it, and we both really liked it. Now, the interesting thing about Finished, it's a solo game, but Will and I play it cooperatively, and I've heard of a lot of other people doing the same thing. So it's a puzzle game. You're trying to complete your daily work on time. Yes, it is a mundane topic. You are at a desk working on a computer and you're trying to get all your filing done. But everything's chaotic, which is usual, and you're having trouble staying awake, which is usual. However, there's a limited supply of coffee and sugar to keep you going, so you better hope it's enough so you can finish all your filing by the end of the day. So, yeah, the theme of it is just like, well, I mean, you go back to fabled fruit. You've got animals in the woods making smoothies. Yeah, that makes a whole lot of sense. So at first, I was a little worried about this game because it sounded like a very boring topic, but it's also a topic everybody can relate to. You've got this work you've got to do before the end of the day, and you could be tired, and, it's just bad day. So mechanically, what you've got is a shuffled stack of cards that range from value 1 through 48. 48, though, is always placed on the bottom of the stack. So your goal is to get to sort the cards back into order from 1 through 48. But you only have 7 rounds to do so, or 7 hours, which is marked by discarding a coffee token every time the card 48 goes back under the deck. On your turn, you're going to draw 3 cards from the deck. You put them in, numerical order. And then you're going to spend your candy. So that's basically your money to actually activate these cards. And then these cards have abilities that will allow you to manipulate your cards. But you have to manage your candy supply carefully because you don't get it back automatically. There's cards that pop up that give you candy. So you can try to put work off into the future. You move it up, you're out of the way, you're not going to think about it right now. And this lets you draw more cards. But eventually you have to stop working on whatever it is your current workload is. It'll all go into the past, which is like a row closer to you. And then you either bring, the work you put off back to the forefront, or you're going to be drawing more cards from the deck. If you ever have too many cards in this past row, you put the oldest cards back on the bottom of the deck. So everything will cycle through and eventually get put back in the deck for you to draw. But what you're trying to do is get all these cards back in order. So when you come across the 1 card, you immediately place it to the side and draw a new card. When you run across the 2 card, you place it on top of the 1 card, draw a new card. So in this way, you're also thinning the stack, continually trying to manipulate these cards to get them back in the proper order. And if you manage to get them all into the stack, you win. But here's the cool thing. Even if you don't win, you pick up the ordered stack of cards and you flip through it like a flip book. At the top of every card is this woman sitting at this desk, and you get to see her go through her day at work. It is like super cute, just so cute. But I will have to say this is a brain-burning puzzle. Honestly, I don't know that I could play this game without Will, because he's really the brains behind most of our wins. I mean, don't get me wrong, I have good suggestions, so I'm not completely useless, but yeah, he gets most of it going in the right direction. However, there's a few rules that are not the clearest as written, and one is just downright incorrect as written. So when you get this game, make sure to go to BGG, download the new rulebook. They've added 2 pages at the end that clarifies 3 concepts, which are very critical to getting this right. Otherwise, it can be too easy. So basically, our first playthrough, we ended the game and we still had 5 coffee. And we're like, okay, that was too easy. We evidently did something wrong. And so the second playthrough was much better. We ended with 1 coffee. No, actually, we were 2 cards away from this is the end of the day. And we managed to get it going. It's supposed to be that tight. And even then, that's playing on the easiest mode. So it is obviously, because it's a solo game, it's supposed to be really hard. So I'm really glad we got this. It will definitely get more playtime as a cooperative game for me and Will. I give it a 4.5 out of 5. And honestly, only because they need to fix that rule book for their newly printed games going forward. But otherwise, it's just so much fun.
So let me ask both of you as designers, what causes someone to publish a game with a rule book that doesn't make much sense? Is it a translation issue? Because he's German, I believe.
In this case,
or is it rushing the product?
A, B, C, D, all of the above. Yes, in this case, it could be a translation issue. It also could be, and here's one of the things, as much as you get your game play tested, there still could be a situation that never comes up in play testing. And as soon as it goes out to the public, that situation comes up and you're like, okay, yes, that needs to be addressed. But in this case, and I'll explain this particular one, it said when the card 48 goes from your past row under the deck is when you actually lose that cup of coffee. But there's a card in the game that lets you take stuff in your current row and put it straight under the bottom of the deck. So it bypasses that past row. So we assumed if you could do that, you didn't have to spend that cup of coffee. But they really should have written when the 48 card goes under the deck is when you lose the cup of coffee, regardless of how it goes under the deck, whether from the past or the current row. So that was, it's hard to say if that was a translation issue or they must have come up because it came up so much in both games that we played, that ability to do that action. So,
well, the other thing too is, we've had discussions about sort of like the German way of, interpreting rules versus the French. I don't even know how this came up, but they're like how, and my apologies to the German and the French if I'm absolutely misrepresenting your culture. But basically, the German way is unless the rules explicitly state you can do something, then you can do that. But whereas like the French sort of way is the rules don't say I can't, like the rules don't say I can do it. You know what I mean? So then it's the other alternative. Well, like doesn't say I can't, so that means I can't. Just like a different sort of interpretation. That might be part of it too.
Yeah, and that's the odd part on this particular one because it only says when it. So if we're going with the explicit German, it has to say it in the rules. It says you only lose the cup of coffee when it goes from the past under the deck. But when talking to Stronghold Games, because they commented on the threads and also the Twitter feed, they said no. When 48 goes under the deck is when you lose the cup of coffee. So if you're going with the explicit rule, they failed to get the explicit rule correct. Now, like I said, once you download the revised rules, it very specifically now states, regardless of how 48 goes under the deck, you lose a cup of coffee. So, but yeah, that's kind of how I approach it too, is if the rules state you can or you can't, but then there's a situation where it doesn't address it, I try to take it from the perspective of, okay, what experience is the game trying to create? Is this trying to create a tougher experience? Is this trying to make a easier or more fun experience? Not that tough and fun are necessarily opposite of each other, but depending on what you think the design focus is, then we try to make a judgment that way. Although most people, if they get to it, they're going to choose whatever benefits them most. So,
right.
Yeah. That's that.
Yes.
So, I mean, it's a lot. Rules are tough. I mean, I was just at the game design meeting on Saturday, and everybody was like, man, rules are hard. I mean, rules are really hard. No matter what you think you're doing it right, no matter how many eyes you've got on it, something's still wrong, something's still missing, something is still screwed up. So we all do the best we can.
Yeah. Sure. Yeah, absolutely. All right. Oh, you said with that one you gave it a 4.5.
Yes, so I give Finished a 4.5 out of 5 as long as I'm playing it with Will.
Okay. All right. Well, Kathleen, fun. What else have you been able to play lately?
Well, I have a board game club at my school, and I've got kids who come every single week, kids who come and go. But one thing that's kind of cool is there is this group of kids where every week they just say, I don't care what we play, but we want to play something new. And I love that, because, some of them are in my game design class, but they're like really interested in games and game design. And, they're like, looking to build their skill set. So I introduced them to Avalon. I think for social deduction games, Avalon is probably my favorite just because, everyone has a lot of different roles and that makes sense. And Avalon makes a lot more sense to them in terms of story. The resistance is a little convoluted to kind of explain to 11 11-year-olds about, they get the idea of saboteurs and all this, but the story world is a little hard to recognize. So we played Avalon, and it was really funny because, we're talking about, you need to downvote, the team so that you can see how people are voting, try to notice those patterns, And so the first game we played, of course they didn't. Everything passed, and then, the bad guys, kind of walked away with it. And so then but the second game, especially after we talked about it, then they understood the game much better. And basically, if you're not familiar, you have King Arthur's court, and of course, everyone, is trying to make sure that Arthur is successful. But then there are, of course, the people aligned with Mordred who are looking to undo what Arthur is trying to do. So basically, you have saboteurs who are trying to sabotage these sort of mythical quests and missions that they're going on. And so by playing different roles, and different roles have different abilities in terms of who they know and what they know, the bad guys know who they are, then, people vote whether or not they want to put a team together. Then they also vote if that team actually goes on this mission. And so whichever side wins 3 out of the 5 missions wins the game. And so I like it because, it's an understandable game for kids, and it's one where they can definitely, especially after the first game, which is usually a learning game, they can see deeper strategies in terms of how they talk and how they negotiate with people and what information they give away to each other. And they loved it. And so it's always fun when I bring out something that, we certainly have played a ton of, kind of goes on the shelf. Other things might come up just because they're newer, and so, to have these kids who kind of want well, I won't necessarily say deep cuts because we're not necessarily getting into obscurity here, but they're really looking to build, all the games that they have in their repertoire. So it's really fun to sort of add new kinds of gaming experiences that they haven't had before. And so in terms of buying it, my copy is battered, because it gets played a lot. There's a lot of kids holding, my kids are really good with my games, honestly. I would say in the 10 years I've been doing this, there's probably 10 games total where I've had to replace them because of something extravagant, or maybe just me being asinine and one card gets taken. Nope, I have to replace the whole game. That might be 2. But they're really, really good with my games, but they do get wear. And so I just bought another copy off Amazon, I think for $10. So for $10 for a social deduction game, that's a really good solid one like Avalon. I think it has to be a 5. It's just a really good one to have on your shelf.
So let me ask you, Kathleen, the games that you take from your collection and share with your kids, do you do things like sleeve the cards before you let them start playing with it? Or do you just...
Sometimes I sleeve Dominion, but of course the insert that comes in the box is not sleeve friendly. So, riddle me that, James, Jay Tummelson. But no, sometimes, but the thing is, I have a lot of games at school. I have about, 200-300. And the cost of sleeves as a plus, then there's between Mark and me at home, there's probably another 700 or so, which is ridiculous. So the cost of sleeves really can kind of ramp itself up. Plus the other thing too is because I have so many, games in my collection at school, some games may not come out very much. So if I have a game that's going to come out, maybe once a year, then, I don't know that I just don't usually think about sleeving it. But I do have some games there's this one little card game, Powerpuff Girls Villains at Large. It's a great, great game. It's out of print. And it's one that I have students play at the very beginning so they can see, look at all the cool things you can do with games that are not, roll and move. And that one's definitely sleeved. And that one's even tricked out that I bought cute little Powerpuff Girl figurines that go in the box instead of just the little stand-ups that they had. So, no, because, they know, gamers bag everything. There are certain mantras that, I've taught them and everything. They're really good. And generally speaking, there's that, although I will say a few years ago, this is probably 7, 8, it's a while now, but time flies when you're teaching, I guess. So Indie Boards and Cards, Travis Worthington had asked my students to design an expansion to Flashpoint. And he saw the work that I was having kids do, just thought this would be a fun experience. And so they did. So we played every, co-op game I could get my hands on. And in playing the Resistance, these 2 kids, and I'll just call one Mr. Stubborn and the other Mr. Impulsive, one had to give a card to the other had to take it. This was using one of the expansions. And in this moment of Mr. Stubborn, Mr. Impulsive, the card ripped. And I was furious. You know, I mean, there's a lot of things you can do, but you tear one of my cards, that's not okay. And so I wouldn't let them do anything until they came up with a signed statement that both of, you know, that they agreed to on what happened. And it took them 2.5 class periods to come up with, you know, it was like on August 30th, you know, blank and blank, you know, tore a card. I mean, like that took 2.5 days, and I still have that hanging up in my classroom. So,
how funny.
Oh man, that's awesome.
I know, but it does happen rarely. But if it's something really good or something that's out of print, especially, I will definitely sleeve it.
Okay. So, what rating do you give Avalon?
10. I mean, 10. I was 5. It's $10.
5-point scale.
Yes. So $2 a point. That's not so bad. If you haven't played Avalon, you should.
Okay. Yeah, I have played it once or twice. Avalon and the Resistance, I don't mind them. I like playing them, you know, a couple of times. But unfortunately, the group that I play with, they tend to latch on to games like that and play them over and over and over and over. And after about the third or fourth play, I'm like, okay, let's move on to something else.
Right,
and right. Like, no, let's play it some more. I mean, same thing with Werewolf, you know, One Night Ultimate Werewolf, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
Love them to a point.
Yeah. I mean, any game where someone can take it over and tell everybody what to do and do all the thinking for them, you know, any game that can lend itself to that can be really frustrating. I was at a board game party at a friend's house. And so, you know, and I try not to be a gaming snob about a whole lot of things, but somebody wanted to play Mysterium. And internally I'm just screaming, oh no. And Mysterium is a great game, you know, like it's really clever. The art's beautiful and stuff, but it's definitely one where, I mean, there was one game where I got my 3 things, round 1, round 2, round 3. And so the rest of the time I'm sitting there because I'll help, but I also don't want to take people's games experience away from them, you know? And so, but then sometimes there's other people who are there poring over every single card and, you know, dissecting every single little thing. And they kind of can take it over, and co-op games can lend themselves to that. And that can get really frustrating, especially when people want to do it over and over and over again. So I absolutely understand that as far as that goes, especially for social deduction games or co-op games.
Mm-hmm. All right. The last game I'm going to talk about is Lords of Vegas. And this is another one of those games that we have played so often and so much that we don't need to look up the rules anymore. So when we want to play a game, but we don't want to tax our minds a whole lot, then we pull out games like Terraforming Mars, Tokaido, Up, Unfair, sometimes Firefly if we've got a lot of time. But this game, I really, really enjoy this game. And Lords of Vegas, you are, you know, back in the very beginning of Las Vegas, and you're building the Strip. And so it's divided into different sized city blocks, and each of those blocks are divided into little squares, and they are numbered. So each block has a letter, so A, B, C, D, E, F, and then each square within the block has a number. So you've got C1, C2, C3, etc. The Up expansion allows you to build your casinos taller. So you can add a tile underneath your casino, but you have to, when you do this, you have to build your entire casino up at once. So if you have a little 2-square casino and you want to add a floor to it, you have to add it to both squares. And it's $15 million a square. Everything in this game is in the millions. There's even the money. It's $1 million, $5 million, $10 million, $20 million bills. So Mark and I played this 2-player, which in hindsight, I realized you need a different strategy when you're playing 2-player than when you're playing 3, 4, 5-player, because even though they block off the F block, so you don't get to build on the F block at all, you still don't have enough dice to build as much as you can along the strip. You only have 12 dice, so you have to manage where you're building and how much you're building. Mark was able to build a 9-square casino, and he was able to build it, the whole thing, 2 levels high, which that's pretty big. And he also had another 5-square casino that he was able to build 2 levels high. I had a 4-square casino that I was able to build 3 levels high. By the way, you're restricted on how high you can make it by the number of squares that are involved. So a 4-square casino, you can build that 4 levels high, up to 4 levels. And then after that, you can't build it anymore. Now, the reason why you want to add levels and squares to your casinos is that the scoring around the edge of the board, there's only 3 sides to the scoring track. And for about the first 9 squares, it's just you move up 1 point for each square. But when you get, it's for the first 8. But when you get to 8, the next scoring square on the point track is 10. So in order to get from 8 to 10, you have to be able to score 2 points with 1 casino. And it does that until you get to about, I want to say like 12 or 15. And then it jumps by 3. And then in order to move up after that, you have to score 3 points at a time. Well, you can't have one casino over here and another casino over here and another casino over here and say, I've got 3 points. No. Yes, you have 3 points, 3 single points. And if you can't score a double point to jump over a barrier or a triple point to jump over a barrier, you're stuck. Oof. So it's kind of an interesting scoring mechanism. And it goes up from there. To get from 91 to 100, you have to have 9-point casino score. Ooh. Uh-huh. Yeah. So it's really, really rare that anybody gets to 100. Mark and I got to 82.
Wow.
And Mark got to 91.
Wow.
Yeah, I think so. He was on the second to the last square and I was on the third to the last square in the scoring track. Then in the deck of cards that tells you which squares you get on the board and also allows you to pay out, to get money, there are 4 cards that say pay the strip. And those will pay any casino that has a front on the strip. Mark had 2 casinos that had fronts on the strip and I only had 1. And we both ran out of dice. So then we're getting all these other squares as we're playing, but they're just parking lots. They're just empty lots. And you get $1 million for an empty lot. But obviously you get more points and you get more money for built up casinos. Anyway, you need to have an absolutely different strategy when playing this game 2-player as opposed to playing it with more players. So I love this game. I wish I could play it more often. I give the base game a 5 and I also give the up expansion a 5. We never play it without the up expansion. It just, nice. Once we added it, it's one of those games that, we play it with everything. So Mark said he found a couple of other expansions, but apparently they are out of print.
Aww.
And which is kind of sad. So I need to figure out, I need to haunt BGG and see if I can find copies of them. Unfortunately, this was a Mayfair Games product, and Mayfair has gone out of business / sold itself to Asmodee, but I think they sold themselves to Asmodee in such a way that we're not going to hear from Mayfair anymore.
Well, they might keep Mayfair as a label, because people have gotten used to certain types of games or certain actual games from Mayfair. So I'm still thinking they'll keep it around as a label, but maybe because of Asmodee buying it, maybe they'll reprint this. I mean, there's certainly a lot of games in the last 3 or 4 years that have been reprinted from really old games that I didn't think they ever would. So
yeah. Well, I mean, I'm a huge Empire Builder series fan. It's my favorite series of games, and Mayfair even had one of a prototype that my boyfriend and I created, and that one was a possibility to go in the pipeline after Iron Dragon was republished, but then, they had to send that back. And so, and I have all the Empire series games, so, I would like to see the line not stop. I think it's a, kind of niche game, kind of series of games that maybe, I don't know. I don't know if we'll see any more from that. I would like to, but I don't know if we'll see any more from them.
Oh, I would absolutely love to see another expansion for Lords of Vegas. I didn't know about the other 2, or I would have already owned them. But But yeah, I need to haunt BGG and see if anybody's willing to cough up a copy of the expansions, because one I think is called Mob Rules. So that's going to be interesting. And I don't remember what Mark said the other one was called. But yeah, I'd like to get my hands on it. So if you're listening and you know where I could get a copy of either of the other 2 expansions for Lords of Vegas, please send an email to feedback@ourturnpodcast.com. And I will be very, very grateful. So.
Or if you're interested in trading for a copy of Broom Service.
Yeah, there you go.
Same email as well.
Absolutely. All right. Well, thank you, ladies. That was a lot of fun. So that's what we've been playing. We have set up and been referring to and rating games by our own rating scale. Here's how we are using this scale. 5. Buy this now. 4. A good solid game. 3. Decent with some bugs. 2. Has great potential as kindling. And 1. Give me back the time I spent playing it.
Today's hot topic is brought to you by BoardGameTables.com.
Sarah, have you ever tried to play a game on a table that's too big or too small?
Yes, I have. It totally takes away from the fun of the gaming experience. Have you ever had anyone spill a drink on the game table and ruin the components?
Yes, it's a horrible experience watching water, or worse yet, sugary drinks flow across your game table and game components. Have you ever been trying to learn a game and wanted to leave it set up but couldn't because the table was needed for something else like, dinner?
Oh, yeah, it stinks only having one table for everything, playing and eating.
Well, now there's another option. BoardGameTables.com makes tables that are great for playing on and using for family meals or just protecting your game from little hands or curious pets.
Yeah, I've heard they have lots of options for customizing, include, cup holders, drawers, card holder slots, plexiglass, wing shelves, and different kinds of table toppers.
Their tables are made out of high-quality oak, alder, cherry, or African mahogany and stained to beautifully match other furniture that you already have in your home with a variety of fabric colors to line the inset portion of the table. You can pick your favorite color or a color that goes with the decor you already have in your home.
I definitely got a plan to save up for one of these beauties. Hey, where can I find out more information?
Check out BoardGameTables.com. You can see what they have to offer and place your order. Don't forget to let them know you heard about it on Our Turn Women on Gaming. All right, so for today's hot topic, we are talking about imposter syndrome in the gaming hobby. So what is imposter syndrome? Well, imposter syndrome is when you are trying to fit in with something or become an expert in something, but you feel like maybe you haven't earned your cred, or you haven't, this isn't coming.
You may not be deserving.
Yeah, you may not be deserving of the credit that should be coming your way. I know that I have suffered from that in starting this podcast. That was a very scary prospect, starting this podcast. At the time that I floated the idea of starting the podcast, there were no podcasts out there that were run wholly by women. There were some who were contributors, some who were co-hosts, but none that was run by an entire group of women. And so I floated the idea. Sarah, thankfully, was a taker, and some other people too who have now moved on to other things, which is fine. But I was worried that we were all going to get told to, shut up and go away. And thankfully that never happened. Sarah, as a game designer, have you run into dealing with imposter syndrome in your own experience?
Yeah, and a lot of people have imposter syndrome, and especially I find for myself, a big part of it is my lack of confidence in myself. And so this affects all areas of my life. At work, I've been doing a really good job. I've been in the same area for 10 years. I know a lot of stuff. And every day I'm still like, what am I doing? People are going to find out I really don't know what I'm doing. Even though I've been here, I'm like, So imposter syndrome for me really comes down to my lack of self-confidence. And the same thing in the game design. Will and I do it as a team. And I somehow continue to convince myself that I'm not really a game designer because I just help him out. He's the one who comes up with the ideas. Oh yeah, sure. I'll make a physical prototype because, well, with him being legally blind, that's very difficult. So yes, I'm helping him out. And then he, bounces ideas off of me. And I'm like, okay, well, yeah, sure. I'm helping him develop his game. And then we run playtests, and I, do a lot of the legwork there in running the playtests, taking in people's feedback, writing rules, and synthesizing things, and somehow I continue to convince myself, no, I'm not really a game designer. Or even if I say, yeah, we're a game design team, but I'm still not really a game designer because I wouldn't be able to do this on my own. Of course, the counter argument to all that is nobody does anything alone. Even if you're a solo game designer, you need playtesters. You need other people to help you. And I'm
people to review your rule books.
Right. So it's a continual struggle for me to remind myself I'm no less valid of a game designer just because I do it with somebody else, just because I may not have come up with the core idea, but hey, look, I added X, Y, and Z to the game and it's polished now. And, I came up with this concept. And so I have to constantly remind myself that I do these things. And that does make me a real game designer. But I have bad days, unfortunately, a lot. And so when I'm having these bad days, my brain goes into that negative hell of, you're not a real person, kind of thing of like, no, you really aren't good here. You're really bad. And it's really hard to shut that voice up sometimes. So I find a lot of my challenges because I don't have a lot of confidence in myself. And when I bring that up, people are like, what? You're not confident, but you sound confident. You talk a hell of a lot about board games, so you must know something. And I'm like, yeah, sure. I know something about board games. But yeah, so that's a lot of my struggles.
Now, I want to point something out to you, Sarah. You told me a story one time about how you were laying in bed one night trying to go to sleep, and all of a sudden the idea for Heaven's Vault came to you.
Haven's Vault, yeah.
Haven's Vault, yes. And you guys started designing from there. So in that concept, that would be your design. It was your idea, not Will's idea.
Yes, but here's the imposter syndrome peeking up. I had the thematic idea. I had no idea what to do for mechanisms, so therefore I'm still really not a game designer.
Yeah, no,
I'm just saying.
You are.
But again, these are the challenges one faces. Is a lot of times we feel something is lacking inside of us. And that just keeps eating us, and we can't figure out how to either, whatever you want to do, close that door or shut up that voice. It's really hard to get away from that and remember every single day that, yes, I am a real little girl. I am real here, but unfortunately that door keeps creeping open, that voice keeps talking, and so it's a continual struggle.
Now, Kathleen, you are an educator and a game designer. Have you had to deal with imposter syndrome in both your career and in your game design and in the hobby?
Well, the thing is when this topic came up, I remember, the list of topics, and I thought this one was really interesting because I am kind of a bull in a china shop kind of person,
No, really?
I know. Well, I don't know. I mean, it's just, I mean, that's one thing and I'm the kind of person that it's just, if I want to do something, I'm just going to do it. And so when we talked about imposter syndrome, I was like, I think this is a really interesting topic, but I don't necessarily have it. But I think it's really interesting. And you're like, maybe that's why you should be on the show and stuff. I mean, and the thing is I think that we all have self-doubts. We all have, adversity, like the things that we, sort of like have to face when we encounter a problem, and the thing with, I was doing some reading on imposter syndrome before the show and, what Sarah was talking about, like basically, people who are most likely to have imposter syndrome are high achievers who are still unable to internalize and accept their success, and, for me, the tilt is, hey, there's the high achiever part, right? That's awesome, but but if you're feeling imposter syndrome, you might tilt towards the unable to internalize and accept that sort of success. And the thing is I screw up all the time in front of an audience. I have in any given hour of the day, 12 to 15 kids who will tell their parents any and everything I do. Now, luckily, we have a ton of fun together and things are going pretty much okay and parents are happy and, that's great. But the thing is I screw up all the time. And I tell the kids, when an adult is just basically a grown-up middle school kid, what you're doing and your struggles now, I feel like that sometimes, and we have these class meeting groups where I meet with a group of kids every 2 weeks, like an advisory, and there's different things we have to do. And honestly, I swear, so many times it's me telling stories to them of what is just not even an idiot or screw up. I was going to say that, but just I was just a middle school kid too, and the times and when I did this or when I did that, and or the time somebody said this and it hurt my feelings. And, I'm really transparent with them a lot, maybe too much so sometimes. Because at one point we were talking about rumors and gossip, and I was talking about how I said, maybe I'm, hitting the bottom of this well in terms of my weird stories from middle school. But yeah, one time in class I farted and everybody was talking about it afterwards. I'm not saying everything I tell them is magic. I'm not saying that. But the thing too is, I think there has to be this sort of acceptance of, we're all little shattered eggshells, you know what I mean? And we're held together with, beauty and paint and, and just love for the world or whatever it is. We all have, cracks that we're trying to desperately kind of hold together with that membrane to keep all the gushy stuff inside, And for some people, they feel those cracks so much more so. Mm-hmm. For other people, boneheads like me, I don't know. I guess I am a lot more forgiving of myself of all the ways I've screwed up in my life because one, I'm in a place where I can recognize objectively I've got things pretty good. And two, I'm done beating myself up. I'm done punishing myself. I'm not a little person, but I like what I see when I look in the mirror. I know that I can do all kinds of wizardry with paint on my face if I want to change the way I look. I know that I can be funny. I know that I will say the wrong thing. I know that my lack of experience in different things will show. But at the end of the day, just there's that part of me that tilts towards I choose to believe in myself because that's the only thing you can do. I remember when I was 14 years old and my biological father, who I don't speak with too much, but, or really ever, but, he was giving me some advice and it was absolutely terrible advice. It was things like lose weight and stuff like that. Absolutely terrible advice. And I said, well, the thing about me, here's what I live by. And even at 14, whatever it was, maybe it was high school, but he said, I can't be mad at myself if something blows up, if I trusted myself when I made that decision, because even if it blew up, even if everything went to hell, I didn't second guess myself. And if I second guess myself, who's in my corner ultimately at the end, Mm-hmm. And that's just something that I've just kind of latched onto because I've never been the girl at bars. I've got friends who guys will crawl over me to get to those friends. That's cool. I don't need that. I'm happy at home. I've so many people have had these different kinds of experiences, based on their looks that I haven't had or whatever it is. And so I just don't even worry about that anymore. You know what I mean? It's just, this is who I am and this is what I'm going to do. And if I say something wrong, I'm going to apologize. But at the end of the day, I'm just going to do what I think I need to do because at least I can trust myself to do something.
Mm-hmm. I had an experience one time where I found the core rule book for the Firefly RPG. And it's a $50 book. It's a hardback book. It's got lots of art and everything inside. It's a beautiful book. And I was like, oh, I would love to play this Firefly game. I wonder who I can find to GM it. And so I went to Mark and I said, would you be willing to GM this? And he goes, no, not really. He goes, but why don't you do it? I was like, me? I've never GM'd before. And he goes, I can guide you through that. That's not a big deal. You just have to learn the system. And I went home and thought about it. And then the next time I came back to the game store for a game night, I walked up to my friends and I was holding the book and I said, if I buy this and learn this, would any of you be willing to play with me if as a GM, understand that I've never been a GM before? I'm qualifying my failure ahead of time.
Right.
And everybody at the table looked at me and said, absolutely. We would love to play that if you GM'd it. And 2 years later, we're still playing this game.
That's awesome.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And they keep coming back. And even when I, throw together a story, I'm like, oh, this is going to be terrible. We have a great time. And it always seems to be fun. Even when we get to the end after like 2 hours, I'm like, sorry guys, that's all I could come up with this time. But, they're like, okay, that's great. Let's pull out a board game. Okay, we've had our RPG. Now let's play some board games. So,
yeah, I don't think anybody can be as hard on any one of us than we are on ourselves.
Absolutely.
People can be very hurtful. People can be very damaging, and that can lead to, psychological damage where, it becomes a learned behavior, on your own part. I'm not dismissing that at all. But when you are internally discounting everything that you're trying to do, that fear, and think about that fear of being masked, it can have such negative implications on your ability to proceed, on your ability to move forward.
Yeah.
It's so frustrating.
I'm looking at a infographic that you shared with us before the show, and it says on here, men seek promotions if they meet 60% of the posted requirements. Women only apply if they feel that they qualify for 100% of of the requirements.
Yeah, that's happening to me right now at work. I'm waiting for a particular type of position because I work for the government. So everything's really structured. And there's a particular type of position I want because that's where I feel I want to go. And that's where I feel I'm qualified for. And everybody around me is like, well, why didn't you go for this one or that one? You're really qualified. And I'm like, no, I don't feel it inside. I don't feel that I can actually do that because I've never done X, I've never done Y. And they're like, oh, you're going to learn it. Don't have more confidence in yourself. You can do it. You do half of the stuff here already. You'd get paid more. And so, that's always that really hits home for me because, if I don't feel like I can do it 100%, I don't even try. I'm not even going to go for it. And then I see, and I guess I can see mostly guys. I see these guys go for it and I'm like, I can do it better than they're doing it. They don't even have half the skills they need. So it's quite interesting. It's a different perspective on it.
But I think that's a fair perspective because I definitely think, and there's plenty of evidence out there, that women can be judged way more harshly than men can in the same position. Women aren't paid as much. So there's definitely some systemic things built in terms of why you would feel that way. Because there's some objective evidence that if you and somebody else had 60% of the skill set needed to do the job, people tend to assume he's going to be effective and they tend to maybe be more critical to you. And why would you want to open yourself up to that every single day? I think that's a totally fair, legitimate thing.
I think some of it too goes back to how boys and girls are treated, during their childhood. Boys are encouraged to be adventurous, to, go out and take risks. Girls are taught largely to, don't push it. Don't, don't put yourself out there. It's too dangerous. They're raised with a lot of fear of the outside world. And I can remember going through that myself. But I was always one of those kids that was like, but I want to be over there. Why can't I be over there? And usually there were a bunch of boys over there. And it's not that I was trying to get the boys' attention. I liked what they were doing and I wanted to go do it. And if I had to buy the little girl's handbook versus the little boy's handbook, I'd be more interested in what's in the little boy's handbook.
Well, and I saw something online. It was like a dad, at the beach, the tide's coming in. He's got his 2 children, probably about roughly the same height. And his son was standing next to him, and he had his hand like lightly behind his son's back. And he was holding his daughter, and in that moment, he's teaching his son how to stand up to the waves. And with holding his daughter, he's trying to protect her from it, but he's also not letting her have that sort of experience. Mm-hmm. And I think that can be part of that, kind of building in too. But like for myself, I have 3 sisters. I don't have any brothers, and there's a lot of us. And we were in Girl Scouts, and we did a lot of things where we were empowered from a young age to go camping, to build fires, to do things. Like, I know I can make things. I know I can build things. And we had those experiences that really built that. And the other thing that I thought was really interesting when I was reading about this, that people with imposter syndrome tend to have parents who either both overpraise and criticize, like that they can oscillate between those 2 extremes, and it's funny because like I think about my parents, they weren't overpraisers, they were high school teachers, you know what I mean? Like they were kind of done with me and my underachieving messy grades. They're like, look, you got to figure this out, so they weren't necessarily criticizing, but there was none of this, oh, how wonderful, you actually managed to turn something in on time. I had none of that, you know what I mean? And so maybe, I don't know if that's something, I don't know, it's interesting.
That is actually very much something. That's pretty much my parents. I mean, I went to a private elementary school, and so it was smaller class sizes, more attention for each student. So I was always pushed to get the best grades. And so when I got the best grades, I got, really good praise. If I got a B+, oh my God, watch out, the world just crumbled.
Yeah.
It's like, nope, you didn't do well enough. Or there was always the list of chores. You got 10 chores to do when you get home. You miss one of them. Or you just missed that pot on the stove when you're washing dishes. Oh boy, did you get yelled at. So I do believe that a lot of it does come from my insecurity and lack of self-confidence comes from an early age of that really high dichotomous, yes, you're a really good kid, to no, you're a really terrible kid. And that's very confusing.
Mm-hmm. Now, we did a survey recently. Now, I'm not going to claim it's a scientific survey. It's not. It's not by any stretch of the imagination. A group of us are getting together to organize a convention here in Sacramento. I had to battle huge imposter syndrome before I ever reached out to any of my friends to ask, hey, what do you guys think of this idea? But we put out the survey, and I was thinking, gosh, it'd be great if we can get like 50 responses.
Uh-huh.
In less than a month, we got 327 responses, I think. And 270 of those gave us their email address.
Wow.
But part of the survey was, what's your gender? What's your, this is about board gaming and RPGs and miniature gaming and that kind of thing. So we were asking, what's your gender? What's your age? Do you identify as male? Do you identify as female? Do you identify as other, something else? And of all the responses we got, 70% were male. 70% were white. And, that I think also tends to feed into it. Board gaming, by and large, has been for not just board gaming, but RPGs as well, and miniature gaming, has been a male-dominated hobby for a long time. And now women are trying to step into it and design games and create podcasts and run conventions and, do all these things. And there's a lot of men out there who are accepting and wonderful and supportive. And then there are a lot of men out there who quite literally try to shut us down. And I have been very grateful that I haven't run into any of those guys as far as this podcast goes. But I am starting to feel it a little bit as far as the convention organizing goes. And that can be scary, and it can be damaging to my confidence and the confidence of the people that are trying to be involved in it. And when you walk into a game day, at the friendly local game store or at the library or wherever the event's being held, and the sea of white male faces looks up at you and kind of gives you this, what are you doing here kind of look, that can be a little intimidating too. Quite a bit intimidating.
I remember one time when for my first Gen Con, I signed up for a bunch of different events, and I signed up for an Empire Builder series game, which is, one of my favorite series of games. And it's, the train games, right? So it's definitely tilts heavily on the white male bend. And so I signed up for one, and I didn't realize that it was a Puffing Billy tournament. I didn't know what Puffing Billy was. I knew the game. I knew how to play the game. And so I sat down, and I can't fault the guys, who, were surprised to probably see me there because I hadn't been in any of the other games and the other events that go on this long weekend of this Puffing Billy tournament. But, when I sat down, they immediately started to explain to me how to play. And I said, I know how to play. That's why I signed up for this game. And they couldn't be, of course. And that's funny because that's one of the stories I've told my middle school students about, it was illustrating some point. And I said, what could they have done differently? And this one student kids are saying this and that, but one kid said, just ask. And I said, that's right. All they had to do was say, hey, do you know how to play? And I'd be like, I sure do. Let's get it on. And they'd be like, cool. You know what I mean? But instead, from the start, there's just that assumption that I'm somehow, possibly an outsider, because I'm a girl. And, and the thing is I have like a convention wardrobe. I have a Loki dress. I have a dress that has all the female heroes from Marvel on it. I have a Wonder Woman dress. I have a lot of nerdy, geeky clothes that I wear when I go to conventions. And it is absolutely they're fun. I mean, hello. And Loki's awesome. And, Tom Hiddleston can call me any time and I will always take his call seriously. He can stir his tea with me as long as he wants. But, back to the point, it's stuff I like, but it's also very much an outward symbol of both, I am a woman, I am wearing dresses, I'm wearing heels, whatever, but also, I am part of this nerdy, geeky world too. And I think it's absolutely an intentional way to insert myself into, that sort of story and world. This is not just for you. And so, when I see women wearing any kind of shirt or something like that, I'm like, yay, one, celebrate what you love. That's first and foremost. Mm-hmm. But two, I wonder if they're doing that for similar reasons too, as an intentional type of uniform that they're wearing for the arena that they're going into. Whereas some guys at conventions, they don't even shower and they're accepted as gamers. We've got to have, the right shirt on.
Right. Thankfully this hasn't happened to me, but I have heard stories of women who go into the friendly local game store and the employees come up and say, oh, are you looking for something for your boyfriend or for your husband or for your son? No, I'm here looking for something for me. Mm-hmm. And not only that, but I know what I'm looking for and I know what I like and I know what I want. So just tell me where it is in the store and I'm fine,
Right. Just ask.
Yeah.
How can I help you? Mm-hmm. What can I do to make your gaming experience even better than it was tomorrow? I'd be like, thank you. Now go back in the stacks and pull all these titles for me.
Exactly. Exactly.
Yeah. Well, it's funny too, because I saw a funny meme and somebody had they took a picture of a sort of signs of warning rattlesnakes. And on the sign it said, treat them with distance and respect. And some woman tweeted it out and she said something along the lines of, women just want to be treated like rattlesnakes, just give us distance and respect. And I think, pulling back to the whole idea of imposter syndrome, it's not a made up thing that comes out of nowhere. Because you touched, Sarah, you touched on, aspects of your family in terms of where that can lead you to have some uncertainty about yourself. Because what's valuable? Is it Sarah the person or is it Sarah the grade getter? And if it becomes Sarah the grade getter, if you're then not achieving, what does that mean for you? I mean, that, because I deal with this with students all the time. And one of the things that I love about teaching game design is my students have to learn how to deal with failure and push through it. Hopefully they'll go through 4 cycles of iteration for their game, and they have to see that they can get better. They have to see that their game can improve if they stick with it, if they keep working on it, because I want them to have build that confidence that they can take on something absolutely absolutely bonkers and ridiculous, but that they can be successful in making it better. But they have to be able to, it's really hard when some kids hit that failure wall though, that first play test. And I try to warn them and prepare them about, what's going to happen, and I talk about how, like, as a designer, I run to failure. I want to see my games fail because I know the problems are there. And I am so thankful that other people are helping me see them, and this is so counter to everything that they've learned in school, where it's about, the one test and you do well in the one test and then you move on to the next test. But to have this kind of like ongoing process with them, just like this ocean that just keeps hitting you, but that's what I'm trying to do. Stand up to that ocean. You can do this.
Yeah, so as much as I obviously still struggle with imposter syndrome, I do believe wholeheartedly that board gaming and designing games has really helped me overcome quite a lot. Because like you said, you have to face your failures. Before, it's like, I would like, what was that whole thing where if you don't even try, you've already failed? Mm-hmm. Well, that pretty much was me. If I didn't think I could succeed at all, I just wouldn't. So I was automatically already failing. But with board games, you can't do that. If you want to design something and you want to make it better, you have to keep trying to get through that wall. Uh-huh. And our first designs, oh my God, they were terrible. We worked on one game for almost 2.5 years before we finally shelved it. But those were the most valuable 2.5 years we ever could have gone through because we were brand new. We didn't know what the hell we were doing. We just kept working on this thing and kept changing this thing. We kept showing it to people. And it got to be where it was the best game that it could ever be. And it was still bad, but we needed to know how that worked, that process. So now that I run a local game design group, when we get new designers in, for one, I'm kind of nervous because I'm like, okay, are they the open-minded or the closed-minded type? Because the new designers, we were there. We were like, oh my God, we've got the next best thing to Monopoly, right?
Right.
And no, you don't. You've got the next worst thing. And so we've, get new designers all the time. And I so want to help each and every one of them. And so many of them won't let me. And this has absolutely nothing to do with me being a girl. This just has to be with their mindset. They're so close-minded. They're like, I have the most awesomest thing ever. There's nothing you could say or do that's going to make me change my mind about this. And it's already fantastic. And my first thought is, why are you here? Right. Your kids, I'm so grateful that you're starting with them now because, obviously they have to be in school, so they have to be doing these things. But as an adult, these people are coming in, and it's like, if your mind is already made up as an adult, there's nothing I can do. You're wasting all of our time.
Yes.
You're making me hell of a lot more frustrated because I want to help everybody. I don't know. I have this huge heart, and I just want to help everybody. And there's points where it makes me want to cry or pull my hair out because I can't get through to them. And Will has to calm me down. He's like, you can't help everybody. You can only do what you can do. Right. And then we get new people in that are totally open and they're like, I don't know what I'm doing. This is probably crap. Can you help me make it not crap? And I'm like, yes, come every month. We can do this.
Yes.
And so I've gained a lot of confidence. It's hard. I'm not to the point where I have that 100% of the time, but I feel over the because we started designing in 2013. So we've been doing this for 5 years. I probably had 20% confidence all the time back in 2013. And I feel like I'm at a good 60%. So I have made, if you got to put numbers on it, hey, I'm a data person. I got to put numbers on everything. I've come a really long way. So I definitely feel that playing games, I've gotten more confidence in myself. I used to think I was stupid all the time, that I was a complete idiot. I'd get so upset at myself for making a mistake in a board game. Oh my God, I just sabotaged myself. And we're 2 turns into the game and we still got an hour to play. And I'm beating myself up. And it's like, I don't do that. Well, as much. I don't do that as much anymore because I'm like, okay, I made a mistake. All right, that's fine. Let's just keep going. It's the experience. It's learning that it's about the journey that you're going through, not the end game. And I lost where I was going with this train of thought.
Well, So there was a couple of things that I saw in terms of like how you can overcome this. And I think you just illustrated some of those beautifully, because there was one thing I saw as an infographic in my, mad Googling of imposter syndrome for my 2-bit psychology here. But one was attribute your success to you. You've done that. You've shown that you've achieved some success, and you can help people, and that you want to help people, and that's because you have a big heart. So you are bringing that success that you've achieved back to who you are, your heart, at the most basic level. You're not comparing yourself to other people, or at least you can see where you can see where certain approaches tend to work better in terms of game design, because that person who's absolutely closed-minded to what they're doing, they're just going to hit the wall faster. And it'll probably be unfortunate that it'll be the biggest shock to them at all that, no one is going to want to buy this game that they made. But they're going to have to learn that it's part of their journey. You can only do as much as you can, except that you're a work in progress. You've raised your level from, 20% to 60%. That's a huge rate of growth,
It is.
And then finally, the fourth one was learn to fail better. You're not so afraid of it from being like this crippling, can't move forward thing, that you can push through it, that you learn so much from that failure. And so it's become an absolutely invaluable part of you. So you see failure as part of this process. So I have to tell you, I think you should have better than a 60%. You're going to determine that level. But as your teacher, if you just explained all that to me as lovely as you did, my gosh. Well done, Sarah Reed.
Well, thank you. I feel the reason I'm at 60% is there are days, sometimes weeks, where I definitely don't feel that. So, but like you said, we're always a work in progress.
Mm-hmm.
I have a bad day. I feel like the whole world is crushing down on me. Who doesn't have those days? And the key thing to remember in those points is tomorrow's a new day.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe it can be a better day. Maybe it'll be a worse day. But you can try to start off on the best foot you can put forward. And we're always going to have some sort of limitations. I have a lot of health problems. And so there are days where my body's like, no, you can't do anything. So it's like getting out of bed is the toughest thing I have to do all day. But you know what? That's fine. And if I don't get any game design stuff done, the thing I think I struggle with the most is I feel like I need to be productive every day, sometimes almost every second of my life. And I think it's because we've learned as a society that you're only as good as you are productive. And I think that's very destructive to our well-being as a whole person. We need time to relax. We need time to just be. And so it's balancing out those expectations. Again, that overachieving aspect of, I have to produce something today. If I didn't do it on the job, I need to do it in my game design, or I need to do it in chores in the household or something. But then there's days where like, you know what? No, I don't have to be productive today. I just need to be me. I just need to relax and have some fun. And again, I lost my train of thought, but there's a lot going on, and we will never be perfect people. And I think that's the hardest thing to accept, especially us overachievers who don't have the confidence. As soon as someone criticizes us, we're like, yep, okay, that's right. That's absolutely right. We are terrible people. But then when somebody compliments, we're like, yeah, whatever. That's just what you think. Go away. You're not right. But it's learning how to accept those compliments and having the faith in yourself that other people have in you is really tough, but it's really important. And keeping going forward every day, that's really it.
You know, one of the things that I tend to do to myself is compare myself to others. And so I will look at other women in the gaming industry who do podcasts or videos or whatever. And I'll say, gosh, they're having so much success. They're doing so well. Look at everything they're doing, And I feel that I turn it in on me and I'm going, well, I'm not doing all of those things.
Yeah.
I must be a total failure. And then I have to talk myself out of that. It's like, no, you're doing your thing. You don't have to do their thing too. If they've got energy to create videos and, do a podcast and appear on 5 or 6 different podcasts every month, and they can do this and that and the other thing, that's fantastic for them. If I were to try to do all of that myself, I would probably drop dead from a heart attack, not being able to do anything relaxing. And my hobby would turn into a job I can't stand, you know?
Well, and I don't think you're wrong. I mean, because there are definitely times, because I spend my days talking about games and, teaching games and game design. And, there are definitely times where it can seem like work. So I think having a healthy balance is important, and it's funny because as we're sitting here propped up behind my computer on the table where I'm sitting is the prototype that I'm currently reworking for Colossal. And it's a dexterity game, and I completely changed the components. Big change. That now mechanically everything's going to have to be reworked and redone. And, it's one of those things where it's the right thing to do. I know it's going to take a lot of time and a lot of effort on my part. But the thing is like, you just have to have that confidence that you can do it. But on the other hand, I don't get to it as much as I feel like I should. It's always there. Work on me. I'm here. But, it's like, I teach and I travel and I do a whole bunch of other things, and it's always there in my mind. I think I'm working on it mentally, even if I'm not actually, you know what I mean? It's always there. And, right now it's a mess, not really, but kind of, yeah. And so, for me, it's looking at this and not having it turn into a tidal wave to like overwhelm, but to say, I can only do as much as I can do. I mean, before this episode, before we started recording, I was talking about how I've been so busy with high school debate. We just had our 2 big district tournaments, and, we've got parent teacher conferences coming up. I'm taking 30 people to Italy and Greece next week for spring break. I have not played many games. So trying to think of like, what have I played recently? And I came up with the 2, but that's the thing. Like, that's just where life is. You know what I mean? And and all we can do is we can pick our battles. And I think in a lot of ways, women are a lot better at picking our battles because guys face their own different types of pressures, that they have. And, women, I think, are better at sometimes, finding a balance between what we can and can't do. Sometimes it is just our bodies shutting down on us, but sometimes it's, like I don't have the mental energy for that today and I just can't get it done.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
Yeah. Well, if you like, I've got friends who love like motivational posters and, those, fun little pretty things with sparkly lights and stuff like that. But there was one thing that I found on imposter syndrome that I like, especially if people want something that's kind of catchy that they can remember, almost like a mnemonic. And so one of the things is like faith, focus, and fire. Those 3 things to help with imposter syndrome. So faith is basically just having that confidence in yourself that you can do this. For focus, they said concentration on high impact actions. So there's things that you can do to make yourself feel good, or the things that you need to work on, that when you do something, you feel like you have some sort of accomplishment. Maybe it's just stepping away from the thing that's frustrating you and cleaning the hell out of your kitchen. I've got friends who clean when they're stressed out because they need to see progress. They need to see from dirty to clean, like very tangible, whatever it is, go for a run. But, doing something that like helps you focus. And then also that fire, that thirst for success, remember why you love it. Remember why you do this. And by kind of keeping those things in mind, those can kind of help you. I think, to me, they make a lot of sense in terms of remembering and pushing myself through what they call interference. And that's all the noise and all the self-doubt. So when all of that's swirling around you, faith, focus, and fire, and you can do this.
Absolutely.
I really like that.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
So I would say that there's 2 other things that I'll share as far as things I have found to be really helpful in my fumbling journey towards this. One, there is a great YouTube video. It's called Finished Not Perfect. It's done by an artist, and I forget his name. It's 1 minute and 21 seconds long, but it's basically about how the world needs artists who finish things. And don't worry about making it perfect, because a year from now, you're going to hate whatever you did because you naturally got better. And just the best way to do something is just to go out and do it. So it's 1.5 minutes long. And every time I show it to my students, they're like, oh, yeah, it's a great video, 1 minute, 21 seconds. That one's great. The other is a TED Talk by a man named Richard St. John, who was really curious, like, what leads to success. And he interviewed all these people, and he's got this great, funny, like 5-minute at most, maybe it's like 3.5-minute video about the 8 things that lead to success based on his interviews with everyone from Bill Gates to Oprah and everybody in between, top down, left, right. And so, his 8 secrets to success, he's got a book that he wrote that came out with it. It's got lots of big graphics and big words, so it's a fast read. But that's another really great one. And I really wish he didn't use the bad word that starts with an A in it and ends with whole, because, there's an educational one that he made, a version of it where he usually replaces that word with adversity, which makes me laugh so hard sometimes that, but, but the thing is, it is a great, great video in terms of things, in terms of making, like, what can lead to success. And I think it can help frame you, the way you think about success and what can make you successful in a way, because sometimes, even what successful means and what it looks like can just be like this, amorphous kind of blah, like, I don't know what success is. I don't know if I'm even close to that. And I think that's another really great one that I have found to be really helpful.
Well, I think we could probably continue talking about this for, another 45 minutes or so. But I think for the sake of the show, we probably had better wrap it up a little bit. But Kathleen has provided us with some excellent links on imposter syndrome, and we will include those in the show notes. And Kathleen, can you also give us links to those videos that you were talking about and the book you were talking about?
Yeah, I will absolutely share those as well.
And we'll include those in the show notes too. And, we would love to hear about how you fight against imposter syndrome in your life, in your hobby, in gaming. And you can join us over on Facebook under the thread for this episode. It's facebook.com/OurTurnPodcast. Sarah moderates that. And we also have a thread for this episode in our guild on BoardGameGeek.com. That's guild number 2600. And again, if you would rather talk about it there, that's great too. We'd love to hear about your experiences and how you work on overcoming imposter syndrome. Sarah and Kathleen, thank you for joining me for this wonderful discussion.
Thanks for having us.
Yeah, this was a ton of fun. Thank you so much.
Mm-hmm.
All right, so now we're getting to the end of our episode and we're starting to wind things down and look ahead. And we usually do that by talking about what we've got coming up in the next week or so. So Sarah, what have you got on your plate coming up?
You know me, I'm always keeping busy with my friends. So I think there's at least 3 or 4 nights coming up over the weekends, the next few weekends, where I'll be having friends over and we'll play lots of games. But I'm really looking forward to our Lego Club meeting upcoming this Saturday. We just were at a toy convention. I mean, it was a 1-day event, but it was still really cool. We got to display some of our, different stuff that people have built. And so it's always fun to get together for a couple hours and just talk about Lego with other adult fans. It's just so super cool. Share what we've been building. And we're going to actually take some of our old builds because we've been getting some new members lately, which is really awesome. And at the convention, we were talking with a couple of them and we're like, oh yeah, we built this old candy store. And oh yeah, we built a sea serpent train. That was so cool. And they're like, we haven't seen this. What are you talking about? And I'm like, oh, yeah, I guess it would have been like 3 or 4 years ago now at this point. So we'll be taking some of our old stuff that we actually still have built and show that off. So that'd be fun. And then really excited, of course, at the end of this month is Will's birthday. So that's always a fun time. I've already got him a couple of gifts and I'll probably take him out to eat at some point. And if I can swing it, I like to try to take his birthday off, but it doesn't always work out, especially with the way things have been going. But we'll see.
Okay. And Kathleen, you've got some exciting stuff coming up.
Yeah, parent-teacher conferences this week. Yeah. Actually, I really
After that?
I really like parent-teacher conferences, actually. I love my students, and their parents are great. So it's always good to see them and check up. But actually, yes, more exciting. Friday afternoon, I will board a plane with a group. There'll be 30 of us, teachers, parents, and kids. And we're going to Italy and Greece for 9 days. So we're going to go
amazing.
The Parthenon and temples, and in Italy, we're going to go to Pompeii, and we go all around Rome and, see the fountains at night, and I am just blisteringly excited about this. It's just going to be so much fun. I'm so excited. So yeah, anything else after that, sure, it's going to be good. But, but I'm going to Italy and Greece. I can't believe it.
I'm so jealous. My class, we went to the Redwoods. Woohoo. I'm like, that's not bad.
No, you were on Endor.
Take a trip.
Oh, there you go. I like that. I'll remember that one.
Yeah, you got to go to Endor, so you're fine.
They're fine.
My class didn't do a trip like that. So, yeah. The biggest trip I've ever taken, which I'm not poo-pooing at all, my parents took a month off of work and we drove from Redding, California, down to the Grand Canyon, and then across the South and up to Washington, D.C., and then we drove up to Gettysburg and Philadelphia, and then we came back across the North. And it took us a month. We were in a Ford F-150 with a camper on the back and towing a travel trailer, and there were 5 of us.
Wow.
Yeah, and that was a great trip. So I hope you have a ton of fun on your trip to Greece and Italy. That should be incredible.
Yeah, I'm pretty excited.
Awesome. There is a library game day coming up this Saturday that I'm looking forward to attending. But first, I have what's called CERT training. And this is a program I'm doing with my friend Yuriko. And CERT stands for Community Emergency Response Team. And so we are learning how to be responders and support people to first responders. So when there's a huge disaster like the wildfires we've had out here in California, or something along the lines of the flooding in New Orleans that happened, or, a terrorist attack or something like that, first responders can't always be everywhere that they need to be. So then civilians need to help out. And so this program was developed actually after 9/11 because they realized that they need civilian help to take care of people. So we're learning how to do triage, for basic first aid. We'll be doing search and rescue, light search and rescue, just things that need to be done before the first responders can get to where you might be. And we're from neighborhoods all over the Sacramento city, and we've even got people from around the county and in neighboring counties who have come to participate. This is the biggest class they've ever had. They had 63 people on the first night. And then the second day, I think we had about 30 or 40 people show up. So the classes dropped a little bit, but if we make it through the first 5 classes, apparently Homeland Security is having a big disaster drill here in Sacramento, and they want CERT people to come and be victims for the police and fire and ambulance people to practice on. And so they told us if we get through the first 5 classes, then we can participate in this disaster drill as victims, and we'll get all made up with goo and fake blood and all of that. So I've signed up for that. And then our graduation, so it's Tuesdays and Saturdays through the month of March. Our graduation is on the 24th of March, which happens to fall right in the middle of our local gaming convention, which is Conquest SAC, which I'm also looking forward to, but I'm going to miss that Saturday so I can go do my graduation drill, and then I'll be there Saturday night. And I'll do the same thing with the library game day this coming Saturday. I'll go do my CERT training, and when they let me go, I'll head straight over to the library and play some games. So
cool.
A lot going on, but it's fun and it's interesting, and I like being of service to my community. So
that's really cool.
Yeah, that is.
Yeah. So Sarah, where can people get a hold of you online if they want to connect with you?
Mostly you can find me on Twitter at EurogamerGirl. I also run Our Turn podcast on Facebook, so we post there. I usually respond. Those are the main ways to get a hold of me.
Mm-hmm. All right. And Kathleen?
You can find me on Twitter at Mercury, but that's with 7 M's, so it's at Mercury. I put all of my game design resources online for free at KathleenMercury.com, and I'm on Board Game Geek as Funk Donut, one word. I really like donuts.
And we'll include links to your online resources as well in our show notes, too.
Great.
And I am one that runs the Twitter handle. That's Our Turn Podcast. And I also am the guild master on our Board Game Geek Guild, which is guild number 2600. And I have my own Twitter account, which I check very rarely because I have so much fun on the Our Turn one. But that's Cathy's Brain, and that's Cathy with a C. And I'm also Cathy's Brain on Board Game Geek. So thank you, ladies, for joining me for this episode. This has been a lot of fun.
Oh, yeah. It's been great.
Oh, it's been so much fun for me, too. Thank you.
Awesome. All right. Until next time, and on behalf of the entire Our Turn podcast crew, that was our turn.
Now it's yours.
Thank you for listening. This episode was recorded on March 12th, 2018, and is written and produced by Cathy Ford, Sarah Reed, and Kathleen Mercury, with assistance from Mark Ford. We want and encourage your questions, comments, and feedback. Please call 916-426-2873 and leave us a short voicemail, or send an email to feedback@ourturnpodcast.com. Our theme music was composed by Adriana Crickle. Incidental music was provided by Ben Sound. Please check out our show notes to learn more about these talented artists. The material in this episode is copyrighted under Creative Commons Attribution Non-Commercial No Derivatives 4.0 International License. If you want to learn more about the games discussed in this episode, please visit our website at ourturnpodcast.com/episode 71. You can find a list of the games along with links to their listing on BoardGameGeek.com. We are proud members of the Dice Tower Network. You can find out about other shows in the network like Every Night is Game Night, Board Games with Panda, or Tabletop Game Talk by going to dicetowernetwork.com. Thank you for your support. If you like what you heard, please tell your friends about us.